want to go now to the leader of the New South Wales Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. He's the upper house member in New South Wales, Robert Borsak. Thanks for joining us, Robert. Very keen to get your thoughts on this abortion bill. It's going to the upper house, and you're saying at this stage your members would oppose it?
I think we probably will. This is, where do you start with this? You've got a government that has decided they're just going to try and ram it through. They created a massive fight in the lower house. They've split their own government right up the middle. Certainly the Liberal Party, the majority of Liberals are not supporting it. Nationals, 100% of them are supporting it. We're now looking at the upper house. It'll come to our house on Tuesday. They're having an inquiry as we speak, which will last all of 2 days, being run by the government. They have over 13,000 submissions, would you believe, Chris? And it'll come to our house. We're looking at least at this stage at 20 proposed amendments. This is going to be a really big thing in the upper house, and I just don't know how long it's going to last for, how long it's going to run for.
Why the rush, Robert? Why has it happened in this way? I mean, we know that abortions have been performed. Those services, medical services, have been available in New South Wales for many, many years. There was no great publicity around any particular problems with the way this was administered through the health system. Why has it then suddenly become such a rushed and shambolic effort to reform the law and decriminalise it through the New South Wales Parliament?
Look, I think there's only one answer to that, is that the government, Berejiklian and Harwin, did a deal with Greenwich and a couple of the others before the election when they were worried about whether they would go into minority government or not. They made great play of the fact that they weren't going to talk to actual Conservatives like ourselves, and whatever Greenwich wanted, he asked for, and now he's getting. Why they would do that and not come and talk to us, I don't understand, but that's what we're seeing. So we've seen an unholy rush to the Parliament. Of course, as everyone knows, not even their own government, their own ministers, other than Health Hazard, knew about it. And now we see it absolutely turning into a shambolic mess. And it was always destined to do that. No different, in effect, to what they did with the greyhounds.
Surely the response here should have been, as a government, to say, all right, regardless of the fact that this will be a conscience vote issue, that as a government we say that this should not be under the criminal code. We want to decriminalise abortion and change the legislation, have a conversation with the public, manage it as a government, deal with the minor parties like your own, and just do it in an orderly process. Surely that would have been the way forward.
I agree 100% with you, Chris. I haven't found a member yet, apart from those that are very devout Christians, who've said that they weren't prepared to look at it. And even, in fact, I said at the very start, I wasn't, because we had a conscience vote in our party as well. I wasn't happy with it in the Crimes Act where it resides, and I was happy to look at what would and what could be done to take it out of there to do this thing properly. But then what we've seen develop is a government that's prepared to ram it through and not consider any of the 17 amendments seriously. I don't think any of them actually got up. All they were prepared to do was have a comeback clause in there to say that they'll come and review it after 12 months. But there were some very, very good amendments put forward in relation to this bill in the lower house, and most of them will come back again to haunt them in the upper house. Now, one of the things that we will do is we'll move in the House to have the whole thing put off to a proper inquiry and for proper consultation, maybe over 3 or 4 months, where everyone will get a chance to put it on the table, and we'll have a proper select committee, which is what the upper house does, and look at this very seriously. Now, we expect the government to oppose that. I would implore the government to actually sit down and rethink this and work with us, the crossbenchers, to try to make sure it happens. And look, also remember, the Labor Party hasn't got clean hands on this either. They've been in there as part of some sort of deal with the whole process right up till now. They need to come clean and also talk in terms of a proper inquiry so that everyone gets a chance to make their contribution, so everyone, all citizens of New South Wales, can then properly consider it and do it properly. And if it is going to pass, it'll pass as a proper health bill, not like what we're seeing now. It's a travesty.
Well, the debate has thrown up all sorts of distressing and difficult issues. Prime among them has been the issue of gender-selective abortions. Is that a red line for you? There was an amendment put up to make them illegal, to ban gender selection abortions. That was defeated. Are you demanding that actually be placed in the legislation before you'll consider consider it?
Yes, we are, actually. Gender selection, conscientious objection, late-term abortion after 20 weeks, proper consultation and counselling for prospective patients before they have abortions. All of these things are important, and unless they're passed, I personally, and I believe my colleague Mark Bonasiak will be in the same boat, we will be voting it down as best we can.
And from what you're saying about the proper select committee, there's a strong prospect that this issue, rather than being rushed through Parliament, this will now end up being an ongoing... it might be done in a much more consultative fashion, but it's going to be an ongoing issue for the government for maybe weeks and months to come.
Well, that's right. And it depends on whether they're prepared to actually eat a little humble pie and understand that what they've done is actually put their own government in a very problematic situation. And in fact, I believe the Premier, who's not in Australia at the moment, should be thinking about her premiership. I mean, when you've got ministers openly fighting and, you know, proverbially punching each other up in public over these things, I mean, that's the sort of thing that went on in the Labor government before Yemma got rolled. So, you know, there's interesting times coming ahead. She should just take a deep breath, pull the dogs off and say, all right, let's now actually support something that promotes a proper discussion and a proper conversation. Everyone gets their say, and then we can actually work up a bill that will work for everybody.
But changing Premier is hardly going to resolve the situation, is it?
No, look, I think in the end she probably won't. She's done the deal with Greenwich, etc. Actually, I believe prior to the last election, when they actually had a real prospect of having a hung parliament, and the last thing she wanted to do was to talk to real conservatives like ourselves. She wanted to deal with the inner city left group, and you have to ask yourself, well, you know, Greens, leftists, where is this government going?
Well, I spoke to John Anderson earlier. I was interested in your remark. You pointed out earlier on that all the Nationals MPs supported this abortion decriminalisation bill. John Anderson, obviously former federal leader of the Nationals, he says he sees the state Nationals now as a progressive party. He pointedly didn't endorse them effectively. This must be rich pickings for yourselves as the shooters, fishers and farmers pick off Conservative voters in regional New South Wales.
Well, look, I'll just correct myself. Actually, there were two in the lower house that didn't vote for it, so I'll correct myself there. But I believe, based on what I've seen in the upper house, that all of the Nationals in the upper house will vote in favour of it. And yeah, look, we are definitely going to work on this as an issue. The Nationals are completely out of touch. We've seen that with what happened in Murray and Barwon. I'd be very surprised coming out of this sort of bill that we don't see at some stage in this next 2 or 3 years a couple of by-elections, and where they occur, who really knows. But in the end, if they're in the bush, then we'll be contesting them very hard on the issues that people care about. I mean, the bush is still suffering. The government's not talking about important things like water. They still haven't addressed the issue of water. We're talking about abortion. That's fine, that's important. But nothing's as important for someone in the bush other than what their water supply is and how they're going to feed their stock during this drought and all the things that relate to it. The government's silent on that. They're sending a water minister running around the state talking about infrastructure, but that's not supplying water now. We call on the government to release water immediately to the farmers who need it, and they can actually give it to them if they really want to, and they're not saying that.
You're sounding like a Nationals MP, and John Anderson says the Nationals MPs don't.
I wished I lived in the bush, but I don't, unfortunately. But we have members now, and we'll be promoting that whole thing. And if it's... I don't like the word national, I like the word shooters, fishers and farmers, as you said, Chris.
Thanks very much for joining us, Robert. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Chris.